The sympathy card or the electric bill? I stared at both on my kitchen table. The card was $12 at the drugstore. The electric bill was $83, already late. I had exactly $90 in my checking account until Friday. I picked up the sympathy card. My brother Harold's wife, Diane, would notice if I didn't send one. She noticed everything. I'd attend the funeral tomorrow, of course, but Diane expected cards, flowers, the proper displays of grief. I'd learned that over the 37 years she'd been married to my brother. I put the card back down and paid the electric bill online instead. Diane would have to understand, though she never had before. The funeral was at Riverside Memorial, the expensive one on Oak Street. I wore my navy dress, the one I'd had for 6 years. It still fit, which was good because I couldn't afford a new one. I arrived early and took a seat in the back. The service was beautiful. Diane had spared no expense. White roses everywhere, the good casket, the full choir. Harold would have hated it. He was a simple man, my brother. We'd grown up in a 2-bedroom house in South Minneapolis, sharing everything. When our father died, Harold was 19 and I was 17. He dropped out of college to take over Dad's small hardware store so I could finish school. That store had been our father's dream. Harold made it his too. He worked 16-hour days, 7 days a week, building it from a cramped shop into something real. When I graduated, he hired me immediately. Partners, he'd said, like Dad would have wanted. We were partners for 40 years. Harold ran the front, charming customers, knowing everyone's name. I handled the books, the inventory, the ordering. We made a good team. The store thrived. We expanded 3 times. By the time Harold turned 60, we had 6 locations across the Twin Cities. Harold met Diane when he was 25. She was a secretary at a law firm downtown, beautiful and sophisticated. I'd never seen my brother so smitten. They married within a year. I was happy for him. He deserved someone special. Diane quit her job after the wedding. Harold wants me home, she'd told me, though I'd never heard him say that. She never came to the store. Too dusty, she'd say. Not really my thing. But she was interested in the business when Harold talked about it at family dinners. She'd ask detailed questions about revenue, about expansion plans, about the real estate we owned. Harold always answered proudly, pleased that his wife cared. You should protect yourself, my friend Janet had said once, maybe 10 years ago. Get everything in writing, partnership agreements, wills, all of it. It's just me and Harold, I'd told her. We don't need lawyers between us. What about when one of you is gone? I'd laughed it off. Harold and I had always operated on trust. We split everything 50-50. We had a handshake agreement from 1984, nothing more. We didn't need more. We were family. At the funeral, Diane stood by the casket in a black designer suit, accepting condolences. Her son Kevin, 34, stood beside her. He'd never worked a day in the family business. He was in finance in New York, Diane always said proudly. Making real money, not like the hardware store. After the service, Diane approached me. Margaret, she said, taking my hands. This must be so hard for you. He was my brother, I managed. I know. You two were close. She squeezed my hands. We should talk soon. About the business. Harold had some wishes. Something cold settled in my stomach. Wishes? For the stores. He'd want them handled properly. She smiled, but it didn't reach her eyes. Call me next week. We'll have lunch. I called her office 3 times that week. She never called back. Finally, on Friday, I went to the main store, our original location, the one my father had opened in 1968. The locks had been changed. I stood there, my key in my hand, staring at the new deadbolt. A note was taped to the door. Closed for inventory restructuring. Will reopen soon. Management. Management? I was management. Harold and I were the only management. I called Diane. This time, she answered. Oh, Margaret, she sighed. I was going to call you. We need to talk, but not over the phone. Can you meet me at Harold's lawyer's office? 2 o'clock today? The lawyer's office was downtown, all glass and marble. The receptionist led me to a conference room where Diane sat with a man in an expensive suit. This is Robert Chen, Diane said. Harold's attorney. I didn't know Harold had an attorney. I sat down, my hands shaking. He retained me 5 years ago, Robert said, opening a folder, to update his estate planning. Harold and I were partners, I said. 50-50. We've always been 50-50. Robert glanced at Diane, then back at me. Miss Thompson, I understand you've worked at the business for many years. However, there's no formal partnership agreement on file. The business was incorporated in 1985 under Harold Thompson's name only. That was just paperwork, I said. We agreed. Verbal agreements regarding business ownership are difficult to enforce, Robert continued. According to Harold's will, his entire estate, including all 6 store locations, the inventory, and the commercial real estate, passes to his wife Diane. The room tilted. What? It's what Harold wanted, Diane said softly. He wanted to make sure Kevin and I were taken care of. But the business, we built it together. You were an employee, Margaret, Diane said, her voice gentle but firm. A valued employee, of course. Harold appreciated your work, but the business belonged to him. That's not true. My voice cracked. Ask anyone. Ask our accountant. Ask— The accountant worked for Harold, Diane interrupted. Everyone worked for Harold, including you. Robert slid a paper across the table. This is a termination notice. Given the restructuring, your position is being eliminated. You'll receive 2 weeks severance pay, which is generous considering there's no written employment contract. 2 weeks. I'd worked there for 40 years and they were giving me 2 weeks severance. You can't do this, I whispered. I'm sorry, Diane said, standing. But I have to think about my family now. Kevin will be taking over the business. He has an MBA. He knows how to modernize things, make them profitable. Harold would want that. I left the building in a daze. I'd given my entire adult life to that business. I'd worked weekends, missed vacations, poured everything into making it successful, and now Diane was telling me I'd been nothing but an employee? The severance check came a week later. $4,700. Before taxes, it came to around $3,600. That was 40 years of my life, $90 per year. I was 62 years old. I had a high school diploma and 40 years of experience in a single-family business. Who was going to hire me? I applied everywhere. Hardware stores, retail shops, offices. Every application asked the same questions. Why did you leave your last position? Why was there a gap? Can we contact your previous employer? What was I supposed to say? That my sister-in-law stole my brother's business after he died? That I'd been naive enough to trust a handshake? Rejection after rejection. Overqualified. Not the right fit. Looking for someone younger. They never said that last part out loud, but I could hear it. 3 months after Harold's funeral, I was working at a grocery store. Stocking shelves, mostly. Night shift, because it paid an extra $1 per hour. I was 62 years old, lifting boxes of cereal at 2 in the morning because I couldn't make rent otherwise. My nephew Kevin came through my checkout lane one night. He pretended not to see me. His cart was full of expensive craft beer and imported cheese. He was wearing a suit that probably cost more than I made in a month. Kevin, I said. He stopped, forced a smile. Aunt Margaret. Wow. I didn't know you worked here. Since your mother took the business. His smile faded. That's not— Look, it was just business, nothing personal. It was my whole life. You could have fought it, he said quietly. Legally. With what money? He didn't answer. He paid with a black credit card and left without another word. Janet, my friend from the old days, brought me dinner once a week. She owned a small bookstore downtown, barely scraping by herself, but she always brought soup or casserole. You could sue, she said one evening, sitting at my tiny kitchen table. Lawyers cost money. Money I don't have. Legal aid? I tried. They said it's a civil business dispute. Not their area. I stirred my soup without eating it. Besides, I don't have proof. No partnership agreement, no documents with my name on them. Just 40 years of canceled paychecks that prove I was exactly what Diane said I was, an employee. What about the accountant, the old employees? Someone must have known. The accountant retired to Arizona last year. The old employees, most of them were let go when Kevin took over. The new people don't know me. Janet reached across the table and squeezed my hand. I'm sorry. I worked at that grocery store for 2 years. I picked up extra shifts when I could. I learned to budget in ways I'd never had to before. The dollar store became my regular shopping spot. I discovered which days the grocery store marked down meat and bread. I learned which bills could be paid late and which couldn't. My daughter Emma called every week from Seattle. She'd wanted to send money, but she was raising 3 kids on a teacher's salary. Don't worry about me, I told her every time. I'm doing fine. I wasn't fine. I was exhausted. My back ached from lifting boxes. My feet hurt from standing on concrete floors. I was 64 years old and I felt ancient. But something else was happening too. Something I didn't expect. I was learning. The grocery store had training sessions. Most of them were basic: how to use the register, food safety, customer service. But some weren't. They had workshops on inventory management, profit margins, loss prevention. I attended every single one, even on my days off. Why? My supervisor asked once. You're just a stalker. Just a stalker. Like I'd been just an employee at my own family's business. I like learning, I said. At night, after my shift, I'd go to the public library. They had free computer classes. I'd never needed computers much at the hardware store. Harold had handled most of that. But now I learned spreadsheets, email, social media, website basics. The librarian, Maria, was patient with me. You're a fast learner, she said once. I'm a motivated learner, I corrected. There's a difference. One day, almost 2 years after Harold died, Janet called me. Remember Thomas Wu? Thomas had been a regular customer at the hardware store. He'd owned a small construction company. Of course. What about him? He's expanding. Opening a building supply store. He asked if I knew anyone with hardware experience who might want to help him set up his inventory system. I met Thomas at a coffee shop the next day. He was 70 now, gray-haired and kind-eyed. I was sorry to hear about Harold, he said, and sorrier to hear what happened after. Small towns. Everyone knew everything. I'm making it work, I said. I'll bet you are. He slid a folder across the table. I need someone who knows hardware, knows retail, knows how to set up a good system from the ground up. Part-time to start, 20 hours a week. It's not much, but I'll take it. He laughed. Don't you want to know the pay? I want to work with hardware again, I said. That's payment enough. The pay was actually good, more per hour than I made at the grocery store, and I got to use my brain instead of just my back. I kept the grocery store job too. I needed the money, but I worked with Thomas on weekends and my days off. His store was small, just a rental space on the edge of town, but it was real. I helped him design the layout, set up the inventory system, train his first employees. It felt like coming home. You're good at this, Thomas said one Saturday, watching me train a new cashier. Really good. You've got an eye for retail. I did it for 40 years. Ever think about doing it again? I looked around his small shop. What do you mean? I mean consulting, helping other businesses set up. There are a lot of folks like me older, want to start something new, don't know where to begin. You could teach them. The idea took root slowly. Me? A consultant? I was just someone who'd lost everything. But maybe that wasn't quite true. I'd lost the business. I'd lost the security. But I hadn't lost the knowledge. 40 years of knowing how to run a hardware store, how to manage inventory, how to read customers, how to make a retail space work that was still mine. Diane couldn't take that. I started small. I made a Facebook page, MT Retail Consulting, 40 years of experience. I charged $50 an hour, which felt impossibly bold. My first client was a woman in her 50s opening a craft supply store. She'd found me through Janet. I spent 4 hours with her, helping her plan her layout, set up her ordering system, showing her the tricks I'd learned over decades. She paid me $200 in cash. I stared at that money for a long time. It was the first time since Harold died that I'd been paid for what I actually knew, not just for what I could lift or stock. More clients came. Word of mouth, mostly. Thomas recommended me. So did my first client, then her friend, then her friend's neighbor. I quit the grocery store after 6 months. I was 65 years old and I was finally working for myself. It wasn't easy. Some months were lean. I had to learn marketing, website design, social media promotion. I took online courses, watched YouTube videos, asked younger people for help without shame. I learned to create presentations, to write proposals, to negotiate contracts. I worked harder than I'd ever worked before. But this time, I was building something for myself. Something that was mine. Something nobody could take away. 3 years after Harold died, I had 20 regular clients, small business owners across the Twin Cities who needed help with retail operations. I charged $100 an hour now. I had a waiting list. I moved out of my cramped apartment into a small house with a yard. Nothing fancy, but mine. I took Emma and the grandkids to Disney World. I started a retirement account for the first time in my life. One afternoon, I was working at my home office when my phone rang. Unknown number. "Is this Margaret Thompson?" A man's voice. "Yes? My name is David Palmer. I'm a commercial real estate agent. I'm handling the sale of a property on Cedar Avenue, a retail space. The owner asked me to reach out to you specifically." "Who's the owner?" "A Kevin Thompson. He said you'd know him." My breath caught. Why would he want me to handle his property? "Not handle," David said. "He wants you to consult on it. He's converting the building before sale, and he needs someone to advise on retail setup. He was very specific that it should be you, Kevin, Diane's son, the one who'd taken over my family's business." "I'm sorry," I said. "I don't think I'm interested." He said, "You might say that." David paused. "He asked me to tell you he's willing to pay double your normal rate, and that he'd appreciate the chance to talk." I almost said no. Part of me wanted to. But another part, the part that had learned to be practical, to be businesslike, to separate emotion from opportunity, that part was curious. "I'll meet with him," I said. "One meeting. That's all I'm promising." We met at the property, an old hardware store on Cedar Avenue. My heart squeezed when I saw it. It was one of Harold's original locations, the second store we'd opened, back in 1987. Kevin was waiting outside. He looked older than I remembered, tired. He was wearing jeans instead of a suit. "Aunt Margaret," he said. "Thank you for coming." "I'm here professionally," I said. "Not as your aunt." He nodded, accepting that. "Fair enough. Come inside." The store was empty, completely gutted. The shelves where Harold and I had carefully organized inventory were gone. The counter where Harold had told terrible jokes to customers was ripped out. "What happened?" I asked. "The business failed," Kevin said quietly. 2 years ago, I had to close all 6 locations. This is the last property. I'm selling it, but the buyer wants it set up as a retail space first. They're opening a boutique. The business failed? "I made mistakes," he said. "A lot of them. I tried to modernize too fast, changed too much, didn't listen to the old employees. I thought my MBA meant I knew better than people who'd been doing this for decades." He looked at me. "People like you. What about your mother?" "She moved to Florida after the bankruptcy. She said it was too embarrassing to stay." Of course she did. Diane had wanted the business when it was successful. When it failed, she was gone. "Why did you call me?" I asked. "Because you're the best retail consultant in the Twin Cities," he said. "Everyone says so. And because..." He trailed off, looking around the empty store. "Because I'm sorry for what my mother did, for what I let her do." "You deserved better." I didn't say anything. I'd imagined this moment for years, Kevin apologizing, admitting they were wrong. But now that it was here, it felt hollow. An apology didn't give me back those years. "I can't change what happened," Kevin continued. "But I can hire you for this job. Pay you what you're worth. It's not much, but it's something." I walked through the empty space, my footsteps echoing. I remembered this store when it was full of life. Harold greeting customers, me organizing the back room, both of us working late to get inventory ready for a sale. "I'll do it," I said, "but not for double rate. My normal rate is fine. This is business, not family." Relief flooded Kevin's face. "Thank you." "Don't thank me yet. I'm going to do a good job because that's what I do, not because of who you are or who your father was." Over the next 3 weeks, I worked with Kevin and the new property owners to design the space. It was strange, walking through that old building, seeing it transformed into something new. Part of me wanted to mourn what it had been, but another part was excited to see what it could become. On the last day, Kevin handed me a check. "There's something else," he said. "In going through my dad's old papers, I found something. A letter. He wrote it a few months before he died. He never sent it, I don't know why. But I think you should have it." He handed me an envelope. Harold's handwriting on the front, "For Maggie." I waited until I got home to open it. Inside was a single page. "Maggie," it read, "I know I don't say it enough, but you made this business what it is. We did it together, even if the paperwork doesn't say so. You're the best partner I could have asked for. You're the best sister I could have asked for. I should have protected you better. I should have made sure you were taken care of if something happened to me. I'm going to fix that. I'm going to make sure you're listed as co-owner. Make sure Diane understands what you mean to this family. I'm calling a lawyer next week. This is long overdue. Love, Harold." My hands shook. He'd meant to fix it. He'd known. But he'd died 3 days after writing this letter. A heart attack in his sleep. No warning. I cried that night. Not from anger anymore. From grief. For my brother, who'd wanted to do right by me. For the years I'd spent bitter, thinking he'd betrayed me. For all of it. But I also cried from gratitude. Because even though I'd lost everything, even though I'd had to start over at 62, even though it had been harder than anything I'd ever done, I'd survived. More than that, I'd built something new. Something that was entirely mine. The next morning, Janet called. "Coffee?" she asked. We met at our usual place. She slid a newspaper across the table. "Business section. You might want to see this." There was a small article about successful local consultants. And there, in the second paragraph, was my name. Margaret Thompson, 68, has built a thriving retail consulting business, helping dozens of small businesses across the Twin Cities. "I learned everything the hard way," Thompson says. "Now I help others avoid those same mistakes." "They called you?" Janet said, grinning. "You're a success story." I looked at the article, at my name in print, at the description of what I'd built. A success story. Maybe I was. "You know what's funny?" I said. "I spent 40 years building someone else's dream. I thought it was my dream too, but the paperwork said otherwise. Now I'm 68 years old, and for the first time in my life, I'm building something that's really mine. How does it feel?" I thought about it. About Harold's letter, about Kevin's apology, about the empty store that would become something new, about the clients who valued my knowledge, who paid me fairly, who respected what I brought to the table. "It feels like freedom," I said. "I spent so long being angry at what was taken from me. But here's what they couldn't take. What I learned, what I knew, who I was. Diane got the stores. But I got something better. I got myself back." Last week, I got an email from a local community college. They wanted me to teach a course, Retail Management for Small Business Owners. 12 sessions, evenings, good pay. I accepted immediately. On my first day of class, I looked out at the 20 students, all of them younger than my youngest client, all of them eager and nervous and full of hope. I thought about everything I'd lost and everything I'd learned. "Welcome," I said. "My name is Margaret Thompson, and 43 years ago, I started working in my family's hardware store. I gave that business everything I had, and then one day, I lost it all. Today, I'm going to teach you how to build something that no one can take away from you." I smiled. "Let's begin."